Hi guys, I'm here today to do my September wrap up. Now, I didn't have a great reading month, but I did expect that because I started back at full-time work, and so I thought, like, being out of the house a lot, I was going to struggle to read as much as I had been and get back in the routine of focusing more on reading in the evenings, and that was the case. I managed to read 5 physical, like, full-length books, then listen to 3 on audio, and then read 2 graphic novels. So not a lot compared to what I usually manage, but you know, I'm okay with it, and I'm just moving on to the next month. So firstly, I do have a couple of things I'm just going to briefly touch on. I mentioned a few videos ago that I got Priest Daddy by Patricia Lockwood on audio. It's a memoir. I listened to about an hour and just decided it's not for me. It's not bad at all, and I really can't judge it based on the very little I listened to, but it's effectively a memoir about the fact that her father became a Catholic priest after he was already married with children, and it's a memoir really about how sort of eccentric and bizarre her family is, and I just wasn't particularly interested in it, so I decided to return that one. And then I had Maisie Dobbs by Jacqueline Winspear out of the library. I really felt like a bit of light reading, which I mentioned in a previous video I did. And I'd heard loads of people talking about Cozy Mysteries and the Maisie Dobbs series in particular. I got about 100 pages in, which is about a third of the way through, and in the end just decided it wasn't for me. I found it all a bit too twee. Like, Maisie Dobbs is completely perfect in every way, and because of that she becomes completely unbelievable as a character. And she has this thing where she constantly thinks in her head about the stuff she was taught to be an investigative, like a private investigator, and she keeps telling you, oh, the man who trained me said to do this, the man who trained me said to do this, and it just happens a lot. And in the end I just thought it was just a bit too twee for me, so I returned that one. So I read one book that I really didn't enjoy in September, and that was Gentleman Jim by Raymond Briggs. It's a graphic novel, and I got it out because I previously read Ethel and Ernest by this author and really enjoyed it, and I just saw this at the library and thought, I'll get it out and see what it's like. And it's a very little graphic novel about a middle-aged man who works as a public toilet cleaner and decides that he wants to try a different career out, and it's just him throughout the novel trying out all these weird and wacky careers and all of them failing. And I just didn't like it. I didn't like the artwork. It felt like one of those graphic novels that was just sort of pointless and didn't need to be written, so I didn't enjoy that one and I wouldn't recommend it. And then the other graphic novel I read was Bitch Planet Volume 2. I read Volume 1 when it first came out and sort of enjoyed it, but found it a bit too fast-paced. I tend to find that with all graphic novels that come out in issue format. I just find they're too fast for me, so that's not really a criticism of comics, it's more just that I'm not the right reader. But I saw Volume 2 at the library and thought I'd give it a go, and I preferred it to Volume 1. I enjoyed it more than I thought. I still don't like the artwork of Bitch Planet. I find it quite dated, and I think it's supposed to be, but it's just not my thing. I like the themes, I like the way those themes are handled, but I still find it too rushed, and I would rather have more time with each of the character stories rather than trying to cram lots of character stories into one volume. So yeah, I enjoyed it, but I didn't love it. And then we have quite a few books that I feel that way about that I read in the month of September. So this is The Past by Tessa Hadley. I read this right at the start of the month. This is about a group of 4 sort of early middle-aged siblings who go to their parents' old house during the summer holidays for 3 weeks, and it's because the house is falling to ruin and they're meeting to discuss selling the house or repairing it. And it's just about all the small things that go on between them. They're all pretty unlikable, and it's just a character study really, so it's very, not much happens. It's very detailed and descriptive. I enjoyed it. I think she can really write. I liked the way she explored all the characters, particularly there's 2 young children in this novel, and I think she handles them particularly well. But I just felt in the end that it didn't really go anywhere, and I'm fine with books where not much happens, but this didn't have enough of everything else to carry that not much happening for the length of the novel. So I gave this one, you know, sort of 3 stars. I enjoyed it, but I wouldn't run around raving about it. And then another one I read is The Lie Tree by Frances Hardinge, and I thought I'd love this. I put it in my 5-star TBR predictions. I've had so many people rave about it, and so many people have, you know, told me in comments that they think I'll really enjoy this one over the years since it came out. So it was one I always thought I'd really like, and I think this is good. I can see why lots of people like it, but I think it has the skeleton of being a good novel, The plot and the themes are solid, but I just don't think she does enough with them. I think the plot becomes really predictable. I think there's a point midway through where it feels like it could be shorter and it just drags a little bit. And I think the main character isn't enough of a character. She has a very basic outline of who she is as an individual, and it never really changes, and everything's just a little bit too obvious. So yeah, I wasn't a massive fan. I think it was a nice easy read, but I, you know, again, didn't love it, so that's a shame, but there's that one. And then I also re-listened to Career of Evil by J.K. Rowling on audio. I listened to this a while back, and I enjoy the Cormorant Strike books for the characters, not for the mysteries. I do think the third book is the best, I think the mystery is the best, and I like the way the relationship between Cormorant and Robin has been developed really well. And I watched the miniseries and was really annoyed when they said that book 3 was going to be next year. So I just decided to re-listen to it. You know, I enjoy these for what they are. They're not great mysteries, but they are nice, easy character studies. And yeah, the way he's represented in the books is quite different to the way the series has chosen to represent him. But I like him both either way, and I actually think the people they cast do it really, really well, even if they're not quite how they were described in the books. So there's that. And then I have a couple more books that I have in physical form. So I read Goodbye Vitamin by Rachel Khong. I was kindly sent this by Russell. I'll link his channel down below. And we read this together and we both really enjoyed it. It's a debut novel, and it's about a woman who's in her early 30s whose fiance has just randomly up and left her for somebody else. And then her mum rings her to say that her father has been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and she asks if she'll come home for the year to help look after him as his condition worsens, basically. And this is a collection of diary entries from our protagonist, and also interspersed with those diary entries is letters that her father wrote to her when she was a small child and didn't give to her, but he's giving to her now as an adult. This is a very short book. I really enjoyed it. It's a difficult one for me to describe because it's quite different in tone from what I usually read. It's quite comical, but all of the comedy is tinged with melancholy, I'd say. I think in such a short space of time it really captures all the characters really well. I particularly like the mother, and I think the interplay between, I felt the two big themes in this were that of being a caregiver, so a caregiver as a parent, and then when that responsibility has to be handed over to the child because of illnesses like Alzheimer's. Or the other theme I felt was handled really well was the way children view their parents. So our main character adores her father and will see no wrong in him, and as his illness progresses, the truth starts to come out about things he's done in the past that haven't been particularly kind, and these revelations really shake her view of him, but she can't really discuss them with him because of his illness. So I'd recommend this. I think it's a strong debut, and I'll certainly you know, look for what she's doing in the future. And then we have this weighty tome. This took me nearly 2 months to read. This is Stamped from the Beginning, The Definitive History of Racist Ideas in America by Ibram X. Kendi. Now, I'm going to talk about this in another video with maybe 1 or 2 other books because it's just too much. There's too much going on to talk about in this video, basically. What I will say is this is an academic book. This is not an easy read. I probably read about 15 pages in like 40 minutes, and I could never read more than 2 chapters at once because it's quite dense. At some points it gets quite dry and difficult to read, but I think a lot of that is to do with the topics you're reading about. I think this is really necessary. I'm really glad I read it, glad to have finished it, and my particular favourite bit was the last sort of 100 pages, which dealt with from World War II onwards. So I'm going to talk about this more in another video because there's so much more to say, but I certainly enjoyed it. Would definitely recommend it if you're willing to read an academic book that's quite difficult. And yeah, I'll talk about it more in another video. So then I have, I think, 3 more books to talk about. So I listened to 2 memoirs on audio. The first one of those being The Gender Games by Juno Dawson. I've heard quite a few people rave about this one, and I had quite a few credits, and I thought, do you know what, I'm going to give it a go. So I haven't read any of Juno's previous books because Juno writes for young adults, and I don't tend to enjoy young adult fiction. But I heard really good things about this memoir, and so I wanted to give it a go. And this book really tackles gender And Juno deals with gender as though gender is this sort of evil boogeyman, and each chapter focuses on a different type of gender stereotyping and also representation in the media of trans people. And I think this is handled really, really well. I will say, I think this book in the right hands is incredibly important and necessary. And what I mean by that is I think this book would be phenomenal if it was taught in schools. I think if this book was stocked in school libraries and given out to students between the age of 13 upwards, I think it's really necessary, incredibly readable. And there are points when Juno goes into detail about her sex life, which would perhaps be for a slightly older audience, but other than that, I think it's really important. I really enjoyed this. I think it's really funny. Juno's about 10 years older than me, so there's some of the TV shows that Juno spoke about which I couldn't completely relate to, but I know of them enough that I enjoyed the references. And I agreed with everything Juno had to say, and that's why I didn't completely adore this book, because I was already convinced. So I think this book is really great for people who need a bit more convincing or just need to know a little bit more and be given a bit of food for thought. So I'd really recommend it, and I really enjoyed it. It's definitely an audiobook I will re-listen to. And then the other memoir I listened to was Hunger, A Memoir of My Body by Roxane Gay. I haven't read any of Roxane Gay's previous books, but will certainly go back and do that now because I really enjoyed this. So this memoir deals with really difficult topics, as you may have heard. So, you know, if you struggle to read or hear things about sexual assault, then this may not be for you, because this deals with the fact that Roxane Gay was gang raped when she was 12 years old by a boy who she thought was her friend and a group of his friends, and she kept this secret for many, many years. And in order to feel like she had some form of control over her own body and her own life, she ate. And this book is about Roxane's body and also the way people view bodies of her size in general. I thought this was really important. I will say that there's lots of things in this book that I haven't considered in detail because I've never really needed to, which is quite awful to admit. And I think it made me realise that there's lots of things that we're trying to tackle now as a society, not always effectively, but we're aware and people talk about them more. And one of the things that is left that people still find really difficult to talk about, even to close friends or family, is body image, particularly to do with obesity. And I think this book really tackles that. It makes you think what it must be like to be in that person's skin, the sort of commentary that just doesn't help, the way the media view people of Roxane's size, and also just as an actual discussion of Roxane's own personal life. It's a beautiful memoir, so I'd really, really highly recommend it. So the last book that I want to talk about, and the one I enjoyed the most in the month, is Elmet by Fiona Mosley. I've already reviewed this. I reviewed it with a couple of other books, so I'll link that review down below. I definitely recommend it. I thought it was a really great book, and I'm really glad it made the Man Booker shortlist. So yeah, those are all the books I finished. I'm partway through 4 books, so I just picked up too many books and didn't finish them. So I hope to read many, many more books next month, or this month I should say. And there's loads of readathons going on, including my own one, which is the Autumn Readathon, and I'm already trying to choose and limit my TBR down because there's loads of books I want to pick up. So very excited for the coming months. This is my favourite time of year for reading, sort of from now until the end of February is like my favourite time, so love it. So yeah, let me know if you've read any of these books or if you are thinking of picking them up. I'd love to hear, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!